While Matt is getting a clicker, let me introduce to you our speaker of this morning's breakfast meeting, Sara Helfrich. I picked something off the web. Sara came before she became Dean of the School of Education, Social Work, and Psychological Sciences. She was an interim dean in the Patton College of Education at Ohio University, and she had a range of different departments that she oversaw: counseling and higher education, recreation, sport, pedagogy and consumer sciences, educational studies, and teacher education. Now, if you know where she in a new conglomerate is now, that fits quite well. So when she was looking into the dean's position, the programs that were coming together here at UMKC were really a magical combination. They speak to each other and they stand alone. I was amazed at the possibility of the future career path for our students and the opportunity for faculty and students to work together. You are one of the last parts of a series of presentations by deans that we brought forward to the UMCRA. After the academic rearrangement, for you in the last newly filled position. And so we're very interested to hear, with that background and the plans, that you have had a little bit of time to find your way around here, what your plans are. And I don't know how you abbreviate stats.
It changes all the time.
Okay.
So, yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me here this morning. I'm Sara. I'm going to talk a little bit about where I've been, what brought me here, and then where I see us going. And I've been here since June 1st. And we know that June and July are quieter months, so we're just kind of picking things up. So also because we're a new school, I really would love to hear your thoughts on our different areas and you know, suggestions on where to go. You certainly know the UMKC community better than I do, but I'm just thrilled to be here. Have really just loved being in Kansas City and being at UMKC so far. So, all right, so I titled the presentation "Growing Together: the School of Education, Social Work, thank you, and Psychological Sciences Now and for the Future," and they abbreviate it CSWIPs, CSWAPs. I don't know, it changes. Everybody says something different. We just have to pick something. So I'll just call it the school. Know that I'm referring to all of those.
That's not quite right yet. Now,
all right, so I am the inaugural dean. These groups have been together under Carolyn Barber, was the interim dean, a longtime faculty member. She was interim for 3 years, and so a lot of hard work went into bringing people together and doing the behind the scenes policy updates and all of those things. So I get to now come in and everybody's together and ready to go. So I'm thankful for that, and just thankful for the energy that the faculty have for this, because I know, you know, being at Ohio University, I was there for several years. You just going through change can be tiring. We added COVID, so it's really exciting to see faculty and staff just ready to go. I'm also a professor in teaching and curriculum studies within the school, so I'll talk a little bit about my background. So I got my Bachelor of Arts and my Master of Education at Boston College. I was planning on being an elementary teacher. So I was certified to teach K-6, and then I also studied to be a special education teacher. And my job when I graduated was middle school special education teacher. Really enjoyed doing that, but realized I wanted to learn more. My students were struggling and I didn't know how to help them. And it was particularly in the area of reading. So I went back to school. I went to the University of Pittsburgh and I got my doctorate in instruction and learning, focusing on literacy. And the plan changed and I decided I wanted to work with people that wanted to become teachers. I thought that if I could set them up to be best prepared to teach their students, I would be more impactful, and that was just kind of where I wanted to be at the time. So I've moved around a fair amount just to give you some context. So I grew up in Pittsburgh. So I lived there until I went off to college. I moved up to Boston, got my undergraduate and master's degrees. I became a teacher just outside of the city. I decided to move back to Pittsburgh and get my doctorate. So I moved back there. At that time, No Child Left Behind and Reading First were big in education. So I was a graduate research assistant and I analyzed what was going on across the state within the initiative, to help all of students up to third grade, specifically with reading. When I finished that, I moved out to Denver and I worked as adjunct faculty at UC Denver. I supervised student teachers in the field in their partnership program. And then I actually finished my dissertation. So I finished my coursework and then I moved out to Denver and I had a year where I was collecting data, writing my dissertation, losing my dissertation when my computer crashed, rewriting things, not all of it, but more than I cared to think about, and then finishing. So then I graduated and I was looking for my first faculty job. And so I accepted a position in Pocatello, Idaho, which is about 2.5 hours north of Salt Lake. So I was within teacher education for 3 years, and I decided that I wanted to look elsewhere. And it just so happened I wasn't looking in any one direction, but I ended up moving to Ohio. So back across the country, closer to my family, where I joined Ohio University, and I spent 13 years there. So I came as an assistant professor, went through the process of tenure and promotion up to full professor. I was asked to be the senior associate dean within Manhattan College of Education during COVID. And then I was asked to be interim dean, and I did that for 2 years. And as was mentioned, it was a pretty diverse college. We had teacher education, which was our largest program at the undergraduate level. We had counseling, higher education, educational studies, which included research, and then recreation, sport pedagogy, and consumer sciences. So people that wanted to work in tourism, the hotel industry, coaches, we had a big soccer coaching program. So it was fairly diverse, but it was related. There for 13 years. My husband was there for a total of 22. He was in the College of Fine Arts in music. And then this amazing job came along and I was excited to accept it. We had commencement like on May 7th, and on May 8th, the movers were coming to move our things out of our house, and we were driving across the country or halfway across the country to come here. And my husband is in the conservatory. He's the chair of the music division there. So it really worked out that we both have wonderful positions here at UMKC. So just kind of wrap up who I am and what I've done. So my background is teacher education, literacy education, and I became over the years very interested in the partnership model of how we prepare future teachers. So Ohio University had a very strong partnership model where students, college students, were in the field working with their future students, young children from kindergarten through high school, starting in their second year of their college program. It was very immersive, 2 days of university classes, 2 full days in the classroom. So I became really interested in how we prepare those students and provide support for them generally, but within the area of teaching reading specifically. So I've published in several journals, language arts, reading psychology, reading teacher, and others. One of my papers was nominated for an award within literacy education. So that was exciting. I don't even remember writing. I feel like it was so long ago when I got into administration, and now, okay with that. I've presented at several conferences, American Association for Colleges of Teacher Education, National Association of Professional Development Schools, International Literacy Association, and so on, and received in partnership with colleagues, nice grant funding while I was at Ohio to develop new programs, conduct research, develop supports. Also, I was, one of the last projects that I worked on was revising general education across the university. And I know that that's something that happened here not too long ago as well. And that was, so I understand the big undertaking that is. I also became involved with the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education in some work that they recently did that was looking at how we make getting into teaching more equitable, to make sure that we're diversifying the teacher pipeline, not setting up barriers to keep anyone out. And there were 13 teams across different states looking at that, things that were happening that maybe were negatively impacting the field, things that people were doing that were good, and just learning from one another. So a lot of papers have come out of AACT about that. And then most recently, I co-edited a book called Exemplary Clinical Models, Teacher Education, where we were really interested in what people were doing across universities and colleges to prepare teachers, when you really take into account where you're situated. So how do you have great programs that take advantage of rural environments, urban environments, suburban, or any mix of it? So that was a lot of fun to write a chapter and to see what other people were doing as well. So this seems like a past life, and I hope to get back to it. But now let's talk about today. All right, so we are CSWAPs, CESWIPs, whatever. We're gonna have to get a donor and rename it after them and then just call it that. So it'll be so much easier. That's kind of my hope. But thinking about who we are, because we've changed a lot. All right, so we have teaching and curriculum studies. So we have undergraduate, master's and doctoral degrees in that area. We have educational leadership policy and foundations. It's a graduate program are offered out of there. So we are preparing people that are going to work in higher education, like at a university setting, but then also school leadership, K-12 leaders, principals. And those existed in the School of Education prior to this merger. And now we have social work, and currently it is a graduate program only. And we also have psychology and counseling. So this is the last bit of the merger that's happening. To just make things confusing with all of the names, in the old School of Education, we had a department called Counseling and Counseling Psychology. And then we got psychology. And now we have psychology and counseling. So anyway, you throw the words together, you can say that's what we have. So this is the last bit that's coming together. We are in two buildings. We're in the education building. And this year, social work and psychology had been for some amount of time in Cherry Hall. And the counseling faculty have now moved over to Cherry Hall as well. So they share floors 2 and 3. And the lab spaces. We have the Community Counseling and Assessment Services Center that is still in the education building, housed there. We have a few other centers. The Institute for Urban Education focused on preparing high quality teachers, diverse teachers to work specifically in Kansas City public schools and other partner schools, and an absolutely amazing program. And one of the things that caught my eye, given my background coming here, that I'm really thankful that we have this center. We have the Urban Education Research Center. They are connected but stand alone from the IUE as well. So they conduct research. They work internally, they work externally. They have a lot of grants and contracts with external folks around the Kansas City area and are doing really great work. Community counseling and assessment services, like I said, so that's offering counseling to community members. It also is catching some of the overflow from the university to help support that. We're packed. There's a waiting list. So, you know, if we have the students, then they provide the hours. They're getting a lot of really good experience in that center. We have the Berkeley Child and Family Development Center. So just slightly off campus, serving kids birth through just below kindergarten. Wonderful center. There was a center like that at Ohio University that I was very familiar with. So it was nice to continue to have that available to UMKC community and the community at large. And then the Regional Professional Development Center, which is located in Union Station. So I think they have the nicest office around, but it's a great space. And there are these RPDCs across the state, and they offer professional development as schools request it. They hire a lot of former teachers, retired teachers to deliver the professional development. And the bulk of the grant dollars that the school has comes out of that. They get a lot of state funding, federal funding. They recently were noted for having a $26 million grant, I believe, to offer professional development over a few years. It was exciting when the curators were in town and President Choi was mentioning different faculty and staff that had done some work, and you see all the great things coming out of Mizzou and the other schools. And then this $26 million grant out of my school was rare. Very exciting to see that work, but it's very, very important, the work they do. So that's who we are. Do you have any questions about the makeup of our school other than how to pronounce our acronym?
And you're the dean for all of us.
I am the dean for all of it,
Okay.
yes. So social work and psychology are new to me. They, as you know, I mean, the merger, the example here, they're in a lot of different places. So if I'm talking to deans across the system, it's not just the education dean that I need to talk to. It would be, you know, the arts and sciences or equivalent that often houses these. So I think it was a little bit, understandably, again, change, just a bumpy road. But these programs together, I think just speak so well to one another. So we are having our scholar donor luncheon in a couple of weeks, and I was asked, what's the theme? And I thought, I don't want to have a theme. Lunch, or they have a theme. And I said, no, we'll have a theme. So they had done some together themes over the past couple of years. And I thought, well, growing, because we've come together. We are still working on that a little bit, but now we're really growing. So that's our theme for the lunch, and just kind of the thing that I think takes us through, not just my talk, but moving forward for the school. So again, you know, I've only been here a few months. So unfortunately, I can't tell you all of the amazing things that we've done, just some of the things that I think we're going to do this year and on the horizon. And I feel like we have some small things that will be really meaningful and some big things that will take years to develop. So in thinking about, all right, we have to come together. A lot of these faculty, although they have started to work together, they haven't worked together for years. They're not in the same building. These programs really speak well independently, but they can also speak well together. So that we have to figure out ways that we can come together. Also, coming off of COVID, everybody was sent in separate directions and sent home. Coming back, looked different and still looks a little different. So it's purposeful that we're doing some things to really celebrate being together as one school. So we had a fall kickoff, and it was the first time that a lot of faculty remembered really being together in one space. We just gave a few updates on, what happened since we left one another in the spring. Things, over the summer, celebrating tenure and promotion events. And really, it was just after that, it was a social time to sit and have lunch together. And if the best thing I do is the taco bar that we had, I hope it's not, but I'm thrilled that, people were just excited to come together and be able to share. We are starting a series of events called Get to Know CSWAPs because we don't always all know each other. So this picture was from the first event. It's in Cherry Hall. It's the social work, social justice, student art space. I recognize there's a lot of work that's happening, and I hear about it because they have to tell me, but they don't all hear what is going on from one another. They don't have time. So I thought, let's celebrate the programs that are happening, the people, the spaces, and bring people together. So we have a social hour in a space where we can listen to people talk, ask questions, spend time together. So in Cherry Hall, on the second floor, there was a space that one of the professors, I.L. Haggins, thought we could use differently. And she created a course over the summer, and she asked her students to create an art space. So it's an art gallery, and it was entirely up to the students what they wanted to put in there. So it isn't student created work, at least not this round. They decided that they wanted to talk about the AIDS epidemic. And so there are news articles and photographs, people in the area of, when things happened in the 80s and we didn't know what was happening, and the misconceptions and, all of the really difficult things that people went through up until now. They curated this exhibit. This is what they wanted to share. So she had some people curating it. She had some people doing the logistics of painting the space. So they created this, and it's going to remain up for the fall. And then because of the course schedule, she's going to curate a change for the spring, and then students will do it again in the summer and so on. But it will be a rotation of talking about topics related to social justice that are important to share out. So it's a nice space. So we had a little gallery opening event. We will have one where researchers from the UERC talk about the work they do and talk about how they can help other professors conduct their research. They can run data analyses that maybe professors don't do as often, and just maybe feel like, I don't want to, if I can have some help doing this, then I can focus on this other aspect of it. So just learning the services that we have available. And then the CCAS center in our building, because of the move of some faculty, had a little remodeling going on, and it's a great space. Catherine Brewer is the director of the center, and she received a grant in conjunction with faculty at the medical school, and she's able to purchase materials to have a play therapy room. So right now we have this great room with nothing in it that's getting ready for all of the tools that she and the students will need to help counsel people through play therapy. So again, great things we have going on, and just, we don't know it. So here's a nice low stakes way to share what we do and make connections. We have two faculty out of educational leadership, Donna Davis and Marie MacArthur, that have started a podcast, and I'm not telling you about it because I was their first guest, though I was, that they're going to launch every 2 weeks, and it's going to share what's going on in the school, talk about some great topics that are relevant to people that study what we study or are interested in what we study. Looking forward to that. And we'll have a newsletter to just communicate out what we do, keep in touch with alumni, keep in touch with faculty that have left us. So kind of excited to do some of those things, because something that I feel and I have heard from the faculty and staff is we have so many great things going on in our school, and we're going to continue that, but we're not necessarily known out in the community for what we do. To give you an example, the IUE, the Institute for Urban Education, prepares teachers. The national average for teachers to stay in the field past 5 years, depends where you are, but it's between 20 and 50%. So we lose 50% of our teachers within the first 5 years. The IUE, their average is at 90% of their teachers are still teaching after 5 years. We celebrated, I believe, 10 teachers of color, which is even more important, that have been teaching for 10 years out in the Kansas City public schools or close by areas. So that's amazing. And everybody needs to know that. And what we do is special, but it can be replicated, and it should be replicated. We don't want to have the monopoly on preparing, the best teachers that stay the longest. We can afford to have other people do that too. We really need it. And the same thing for social workers and counselors and educational researchers and leaders. So I think that our school, thinking about it personally from my own perspective, is being prepared to be a teacher. But from my experience being a leader of a school, I think our setup should be the model for how we prepare individuals within these fields. One of the reasons I was one of those people that got out of teaching early. I stayed in education, but I didn't stay as a classroom teacher past my 3rd year. I'm not sure that anything would have changed, but I think about, had I known what some of these other service providers did, I might have been a better teacher. I might have stayed in the field longer. I do think my trajectory was meant to be different, but I think we do a disservice to preparing any of the people that our school prepares by not introducing them to one another and working with them early on. We'd have much better teachers if they knew what social workers did and how to access them, and counselors. And we'd have better social workers if they understood from teachers what school was like, if they're working with children and families, and so on. So I think it's critically important that we get the word out on our combination of programs, and say, this is a really great way to set up a school. We graduate better prepared individuals. So these are some of the smaller things that we're doing. But in thinking about what I just said, longer term picture, now we have to think about who we are, where we want to go. So I tasked the departments with just that. I said, when you get together, I really want to hear from you who you are as a social work program, for example, and where you want to be. And let's just say in 5 years, but you can say in 1 year and 2 years and all of that. But what do you need to get there? And it's perfectly fine if you think, we do this really well, we're going to stick with this, and there's this one other thing that we want to do, or we want to be totally different. But I want to hear that from the people that do it, because I'm not an expert in those areas, and they would be really helpful in saying, we want to own this. This is what we want to do. I've also asked the center directors to do the same type of thing with impact statements. So what is the impact of the research center, of the counseling center, of the IUE on the community? And how do we grow that impact? How do we maintain that impact? Do we need to change it? Should we go in a different direction? So I've tasked them with those things. And then we'll start coming together in October and November with those statements. Because we need to stand alone, strongly, independently, but then we need to come together. And I want to hear what they all say unites us, because I have my next slide will show you how I think that we can be united, but I know that they're going to come up with things that I never would have thought of because I don't have that expertise there. And I know that they're going to be more excited to do that work if it comes from them. So we're headed in that direction. So where I think already that I see us going, and we've begun some work on it, is with trauma-informed care. So this is the definition of trauma-informed care. I'm not an expert in it, but I know from my experience as a school leader and as a teacher that it's so critical that we understand where the people we work with are coming from, whether they're young children, if you're a teacher, whether they're adults and families. We need to know where they're coming from, what they've been through, how we can support them, and how we can support them together. We have a lot of experts in trauma-informed care from their own discipline within the school. And I've asked them to come together and kind of talk about some of those things. And the excitement from this group was amazing. They have already begun to run with this. To the point where I'm almost saying, let's take a couple steps. Let's not go 40 steps right away, because we do want to make sure that we do things and we can sustain it. But we have a group of faculty from across the departments that are just interested in this and have some expertise. And they have come together. They've submitted a grant for the university. They want to do some training to open it up for others. I think we can serve our students really well when we look through the lens of this uniting us. I would love to have programming, like actual credit-bearing programming that gives students some sort, a certificate or a minor or something in this. So they're, it's transcripted. That will look really nice to employers, but it gives them the knowledge of walking into their environment and being able to speak to something that they might not have been as well versed in before. But I also think we can support people across the campus. We have a lot of programs across campus that I think can benefit from what we know, and we can benefit from what they know. So if we think about people that are going to become nurses, how can we work with them to better prepare them and work with their faculty? Music therapy, there's another area. So we can really branch out across campus to look at this. We don't have to own it. We can be some of the experts in this area. So it's just kind of going in manageable steps right now, but this is one of the things that I think will unite us. And with the buy-in already from the school, I think that we can be very successful with this. And then I'll stop. So that's where I've gotten from June 1st to October 3rd. I would welcome any of your feedback and any of your questions, and
when you mentioned Berkeley,
yes,
I'm sorry, Cherry Hall, sorry.
yes,
Is that the old dorm?
yes,
It is. Okay.
yeah. And you can tell it's a dorm. So, yes, I walked in there and at first I thought, okay. And then you see the rooms and you say, oh yeah, this was definitely a dorm. But so I haven't been upstairs. Criminal justice is on the 4th floor, and the 1st floor has some classrooms and some Institute for Human Development, I believe, is housed down there. So I haven't been in all of those spaces. But psychology and social work have worked really hard to make it look less like a dorm and more welcoming to students. And I think that they've taken it as far as it's going to go, but it's not a bad space. So when I say I would love to rename our school after a donor, it would not only get rid of the C-SWAP, CESWIPS confusion, could also maybe build us a whole building. But again, we're gonna push that over there.
And the art space that you were talking about in Cherry, are you doing it in conjunction with the fine art department? Or, I mean,
Not currently. That I could see that Isle might reach out to fine arts at some point. Right now, the students, since they're taking the lead, they're, saying this is how we want to go. So they're collecting, materials, in this case, photographs and news clippings from people that maybe have donated their collection. I'm not sure if that's the right. I don't know that they would use that word, but
well, I guess I'm guessing how other students, other people on campus.
Yeah.
Are going to know about this.
Yeah.
In particular.
yes. So I think we'll start small and get that out, and that'll be something we get out in the newsletter, which I do plan to share with other deans as well. And make sure that if students are interested, coming out and checking out the space. If anybody's in Cherry, second floor, right as you get off the elevator, it's right in front of you. So, yeah.
Is there a national trend to place education, psychology, and sociology in one academic unit? I know sociology and psychology used to belong to the College of Arts and Sciences, right?
Social work, psychology, yeah.
Social work.
I have not seen that.
So this is unique to UMKC, is it?
As far as I know, yes. At Ohio University, psychology was in arts and sciences and social work was in health sciences. A lot of times they're both in arts and sciences or the equivalent. I know Rutgers has a school of social work, so it's only social work within that. I haven't ever seen this combination before, but I think it's great.
There is sense to have this wonderful combination of social work and psychology, counseling and education. Do you see the education curriculum changing to incorporate this new information you have for students that hopefully will put students out there who will stay in schools and teaching longer?
Yeah, that's a long-term goal. That's what I would like to see. I think that there's a bit of overlap already that exists in some of it. Now, it isn't as clean as, I don't think, when we have those topics overlapped, I know that social work wouldn't say, oh yeah, that is, we see ourselves in your curriculum, or teacher ed, we see in your curriculum. It's faintly there. I think it could be better. I think it could be stronger. So that is the goal, that we start looking at that and take advantage of the strength. So perhaps in an add-on component, but also in the component that already exists. So everybody gets it, but maybe some people choose to get a little bit more of extra. Yeah.
All the programs that are put together, both education, psychology, counseling, social work, are all on a nationwide level, separate accreditation agencies. If you are going to meld more than it's now, just standing next to each other, which is clearly one of the advantages that you have, how are you going to handle the accreditors?
That's a great question, because we have so many accreditors, absolutely. So that's why I think we always have to be able to identify how we stand independently. So as it is right now, if we're looking at teacher education, which is accredited through CAPE, we rely on some faculty within educational leadership to teach certain courses. So I think that we can still do that. We have to look at the accrediting body's requirements and make sure we're true to that. But we can always add in, as long as we're meeting their minimum requirements, I think that we can expand it and go further. But we always have to be able to stand alone. Yeah. And I walked into social work is being accredited, APA is coming up. Yeah, we always have something going on. But it's good. Yeah.
I retired from the School of Education, so I'm really interested in hearing what you're doing. And actually, the IUE was being founded while I was looking. I've been hearing the IUE advertised with KCUR
Yes.
a lot now, and I'm wondering, is there an attempt to grow it even bigger? And
And I think that we had 3 billboards up in the spring,
Uh-huh.
so I've heard.
Mhm.
That's a great question. Yes, so the short answer is yes, we do want to increase enrollment. Across from first year through last year, we have 81 students right now. The goal is to grow it by about 25 more. It's difficult because we have it's an intense program and we have a lot of scholarships that we offer to, entice students to be part of it, to encourage people, to come here and do that. And so funding it is a never-ending process. So we want to be careful about how we grow it because we don't want to have more than we can support, both just with the number of placements that we can get for students, the number of faculty or adjuncts that we can use, or the amount of funding that we can raise for it. So we just have to be a little, and we have been very responsible with it, but we just have to continue to maintain that. So a lot of my time has been spent meeting people that support the IUE in various ways, philanthropic groups. Kansas City's philanthropy scene is very different to me. Ohio University is in a very small town, so it's just a different structure, but Ohio University really relied on alumni as donors. And so just being in a place where philanthropy is so strong is very different. And then, the interest in our center and working with them, but also recognizing that, we need to grow that and we can't rely on people wanting to support, we have to do our part to get that. It's a wonderful program. So I do want to grow it. We've talked about, can we have kind of a sister program at one of the other system schools, but knowing how we've set up the IUE, which doesn't mean anybody else that sets it up has to rely on the same type of structure of funding and things like that. That's a big undertaking. So do we duplicate it? I would love, to see other schools learn from us and develop their own type of IUE that works for them in their area. Because again, the more teachers we can have that work well with students and stay in the field, we have to, copyright IUE and then just let other people learn from us.
I was just wondering, at one time, when I was retired, there was a talk of teaching a little bit more towards vocational type training rather than more liberal arts. I wonder if that's still going on. And then when you saw the trauma up there, I was wondering, because on the east side, we have this problem with violence and crime. I was wondering if that was maybe could be a focus, maybe working with criminal justice department. Is that something you might think about?
Yeah, I think that working with criminal justice would be good, because I think they would add something to it that we could certainly learn from and, partner with one another, as I mentioned, a couple of the other areas. As far as vocational preparation goes, yeah, I think that's going to be a big ongoing topic as people view college differently. I very strongly believe that everyone should have access to continued education. And so it should be, and I know that I'm speaking. But I think, college is one option. But education more broadly to help you learn the skills to do what you want to do, to figure out what you want to do, is really the most critical thing. And I feel like personally that gets a little lost. I think you can say that and we can all coexist really well together. But I think sometimes the argument is so heated that it has to be one thing or the other, and the value that's placed on one or, on the different sides or way people feel about it. I do get it, but I don't think it has to be that way. Question? Yeah.
I retired from the sociology department.
Okay.
And, in many ways, at least I and a number of my colleagues were closely aligned with the social work department and the psychology department.
Mhm.
Worked on various research projects and, community projects together. So when I first heard the news that they were going into this other program, I was pretty surprised.
Yeah.
So I know the my department has changed a lot since I retired, but what possibilities are there for working across units now?
I have grant work and research things that come across my desk for faculty that are continuing to work with faculty across different departments here or, in different but related departments at other universities. So I think it's really important. I've spent some time with Dean Falikov at HSS and talking about how our students can be connected and how we can support one another. And she is, very supportive of cross collaboration. I look at that school as one that, we can and should be very close to. So I think there's absolutely, opportunity for it. We have really strong leadership in the school right now, particularly within those two newer to education departments, and they're all strong, but I am very thankful for the chairs in social work and psychology and counseling, because just navigating it is difficult. So you need a steady person and someone that sees connections. And I know that Steve Onken in social work has really done a great job. And he seems to me to be the first one to reach out and collaborate, and it doesn't matter where you are. So I'm very pleased with that and how I know, it'll continue going. And I have a history of just trying to work with other deans to connect other faculty at Ohio University, starting to get that work going. So it's something I'm excited to do here too.
During the early years of, I'm talking about 80s and maybe before, we have had chronic problem, I would say, with our Kansas City, Missouri school districts. And I'm not sure, I have not kept up, but I don't know if it has kept the same way now, or there have been some improvements. I know some great superintendents were hired in the last 10 years. I don't know how successful they have been, but what is your perception? In a way, it's good that you are an outsider. So you're seeing everything from a new angle. But I think that is one area that needs to be giving attention, being a school of education. And I know one of our dean earlier days, he also was interim superintendent. Who was Bailey? Somebody remember the name?
Dean Eubanks.
Eubanks, thank you. So I think we have had very unsettling history of the school district. So what is your perception about that, and how the School of Education can come forward to assist them and help them?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I have learned more piece by piece.
It's a deep history.
It is, and I have never felt like people are trying to keep anything from me. You aren't thinking like, oh, you're a new person, let me tell you what it was like from the dawn of time until now. So you get little bits and you start to see, oh, okay, now I understand why there are so many groups that are in here and all of the different things. So I'm not an expert on it by any means, but I've spent some time with Jennifer Collier is the new superintendent at KCPS. she's, I was just dazzled by her. I mean, I shouldn't even say new because I knew she was in that role for a little bit, but she started as a substitute teacher. And from substitute to music teacher to everything up until superintendent. And I thought that was the smartest hire I've ever seen. But she is a two-time alum of our old school. So that's very exciting to have that as well. So I think that we have a good connection with her. And she gets it. She wants to support us. She wants us to support them. So we're doing that. It was very important to me that I come here and I live in the Kansas City Public School District. That I go into schools, and I haven't yet because I knew I wasn't gonna go into schools, you know, in September. That's a tough time, but I want to be there. I want to hear what they need from us. I want to make sure that the relationship we have with them and any school district, any partner district through our other programs isn't one-sided. I don't want them to feel like we're giving you so much by training your students. We want them to get just as much from us, from our students, from our faculty. I'm a absolute supporter of city public education. I grew up in Pittsburgh. I went to Pittsburgh Public Schools. You know, I'm not comparing the two because I know that KCPS has gone through a history that I wasn't present for, and I can't, you know, I can't explain as well as some others, but I think there's a lot of promise there. I think that people are really dedicated to education here. So I'm excited for working with them. And the IUE is one really great service that we have specifically geared at putting teachers, you know, back into the system. We have a grow your own program. So we're trying to get people that go through KCPS to become teachers, educators, learn about higher education. At this point, I've lost the gist of your question, but I hope that.
Yeah, it is a complicated question and answer, it's not easy. But the thing about Metro Kansas City is that, you know, we are straddling the state line. When you just cross the state line, you have excellent schools. And here on this side, the school quality is very low. It's so obvious. And that has been one of the reasons that many of the faculty, including myself, we decided to live on Missouri, Kansas side, just because of the school districts. With commuting long distance and all, we thought it was worth it. And many faculty think like that even now. So I think there is a big need for the school district to improve, and I don't know that.
And that's what I heard when I came in my interview and I was talking to the realtor and they were talking about where to live, and I just said, okay, because I'm interested in hearing what people have to say. And I think KCPS has amazing schools, and then they have schools that are really struggling. So, you know, it's hit or miss. North Kansas schools as well, you know, are hugely different. So, you know, I appreciate what I've learned about North Kansas city schools, where they make sure that, you know, this school can't have a parent teacher organization that raises money for their playground. We're going to have safe, fun playgrounds in all of our schools. It doesn't matter, you know, who the base of this school is versus this school. So I appreciate that. I mean, we have to raise up every school. And we do that. And it takes a lot of time. And I know that there's some historical mistrust for schools around here, and I'm sure it's well deserved. But yeah, we have to get good teachers out there to stay and really highlight the amazing things that are happening, because teachers work really hard and the students work really hard, and it's not fair to them, you know, to have those misperceptions, but it's also important to be honest and say this is what we need.
One last question. One of the issues, I believe, with teacher turnover, of course, is pay. And how this, what can you do about that?
Yeah. I know, absolutely, you know, and really. I don't know. We have to convince states to give more money to districts to pay teachers more. An idea was brought up and, you know, I don't really know how I feel about it, but there's a national shortage of special education teachers, math and science teachers. And somebody who I think was an engineer said something like, well, they should pay math and science teachers more so that it's kind of competitive. And I understand where that's coming from. I was not a math or science teacher for a reason. Because I just didn't feel like I could teach somebody, that. But I don't think it's a harder job, to do it. So I don't think that I feel teachers should be paid differently in that regard, but it's an interesting point. In my opinion, I think education is one of a very few number of jobs that is so scrutinized and nitpicked, and everybody feels that if you went to school, you know better. You can teach better, and you apply it to K-12 school, apply it to college, whatever it is that, if I think K-12 feels it a little bit more, again, in my opinion, but I went to school, so I know what will work.
Yeah, I've always said, put a parent in front of the classroom for one day
Yeah.
and you will see pay increases.
I really thought, and looking back, it was entirely naive. I really thought that COVID was going to show people, oh, wow, this is an incredibly hard job, because families were doing everything they could to homeschool, their children and work and all of those things. And I thought, this is going to be the equalizer where they say they need more. And I think for a while they were really appreciative and they recognized it. And I think certainly a lot of people are still very appreciative, but no, that was overly optimistic on my part.
I too retired from the School of Education and worked in the area of student services. And my thoughts on this is that everyone who came in and said, well, I want to be a teacher because I know I can do better, they all referenced a bad teacher rather than a good teacher in their life. And that had a tremendous impact. I remember too, from Leavenworth, a lot of retired military who said, well, I want to be a principal. And it's like, well, you need to be a teacher first. They're like, well, I could go in and fix that school right now. And again, just unreasonable expectations.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely. And there are certainly other professions. I imagine a lot of healthcare professions, some of them are really nitpicked and it's tough. And I'm sure I'm missing others, but given that education is my background, I just feel like, can you give us a break? A little one for a second.
Seeing no more hands go up. Thank you very much.
And if you ever want to reach out, please feel free. I'm over in the education building, stuff by engagement.